When you picture Bruce Lee, what do you see? Black and white icon. For most, it's a flash of lightning-fast kicks and the piercing cry of the Ki. It's the yellow tracksuit, the nunchaku swirling in a deadly blur, and the impossibly chiseled physique. Lee was more than a movie star. He was a global phenomenon who single-handedly elevated martial arts from niche interest to a worldwide obsession. His films were not just action flicks, they were cultural events that defined an entire genre and inspired generations to walk into their first dojo. If you're enjoying this video, please hit the like button to support the channel. He was the little dragon, the indomitable force who could take on an army of villains and emerge without a scratch. He was and remains the gold standard of martial arts prowess, but this iconic image, as powerful as it is, casts a long shadow. Beneath the surface of the cinematic legend lies a deeper, more profound truth, a truth that has been largely overlooked by the very world he helped create. We rarely stop to examine the philosopher, the innovator, the revolutionary thinker who saw the future of combat with startling clarity. His true genius was not just in his ability to throw a perfect sidekick or a one-inch punch. It was in his mind. His body was his instrument, but his philosophy was his true and most deadly weapon. Most people know Bruce Lee through a highlight reel of his greatest hits. They know him as the founder of Jeet Kune, the star of 5 iconic films, the man who made the nunchaku a household name. His impact on popular culture is undeniable and well documented. He shattered racial barriers in Hollywood, becoming the first global Asian superstar, a symbol of pride for millions. His training regimens became legendary. His physique, the template for aspiring athletes. His quotes, "Be water, my friend," absorbed into the global lexicon. He is remembered as a symbol of strength, discipline, and the relentless pursuit of perfection. This is the Bruce Lee of public record, the hero etched into our collective memory. However, this popular understanding only scratches the surface of his genius. It acknowledges the what, but completely misses the why. Why was he so effective? What was the intellectual engine driving his physical innovations? The answer lies in a core philosophy deeply personal and universally applicable, yet shockingly misunderstood. This philosophy was not about creating a new, superior style of martial art. In fact, it was the opposite. It was about liberating the individual fighter from the confines of style altogether. He saw that the rigid traditions of classical martial arts were not assets in a real fight, they were prisons. The truth is, Bruce Lee didn't just predict the evolution of combat sports, he wrote the operating manual for it. Uncovering this hidden philosophy is the key to understanding not only his true legacy, but also the very essence of the modern warrior. To truly appreciate the revolutionary nature of Bruce Lee's ideas, one must first understand the world he was rebelling against. The martial arts landscape of the mid-20th century was a rigid and dogmatic place. It was a world dominated by classical styles, hallowed traditions, fixed techniques, revered grandmasters, kung fu in China, karate in Okinawa, judo in Japan. Each system presented itself as a complete and perfect path to self-defense. Practitioners spent years, even decades, mastering specific forms. Katas, prearranged sequences practiced against an imaginary opponent. These were the dead patterns Lee would come to despise. The problem, as Lee saw it, was loyalty to the system above all else. A student of Wing Chun was expected to use only Wing Chun techniques. A karateka was conditioned to respond with a textbook block and counter. The result, fighters highly skilled within narrow rules, but often woefully unprepared for chaotic, unpredictable street fights. What happens when a Wing Chun fighter trained for trapping meets a wrestler shooting a takedown from 6 feet away? The system had no answer. The tradition had failed. Lee witnessed this firsthand. Growing up in rough and tumble Hong Kong, he was no stranger to street fights. Real combat was messy, ugly, utterly devoid of dojo etiquette. His Wing Chun training under Ip Man gave him a strong foundation, but the street exposed its limitations. Clinging to a single style, he realized, was like navigating the ocean with a map of a single island, a recipe for disaster. Bruce Lee's definitive break from tradition was crystallized in his most radical and defining philosophical statement, using no way as way, having no limitation as limitation. This deceptively simple phrase was the cornerstone of Jeet Kune Do and the intellectual bombshell that would, decades later, provide the philosophical blueprint for mixed martial arts. It was a declaration of independence from the rigid, dogmatic world of classical martial arts. He was not merely suggesting a modification to the old ways, he was advocating for their complete and total abandonment in favor of something far more personal, fluid, profoundly effective. It was the birth of a new kind of martial artist. What did no way as way truly mean? It meant that the path to mastery did not lie in memorizing the techniques of a pre-existing system. It was not about becoming a perfect practitioner of Wing Chun karate, any other style. Instead, the path was the process of self-discovery itself. The way was to have no fixed way. A fighter should be free to borrow from any source, to experiment with any technique, and to ultimately forge a personal expression of combat uniquely suited to their own body, their own attributes, the specific situation they faced. Lee was the first to formalize the idea that the individual is more important than the system. This was a shocking and heretical concept in the martial arts world of the 1960s. Grandmasters and traditionalists viewed him as an arrogant upstart who was disrespecting centuries of accumulated wisdom. But Lee saw it differently. He saw freedom where they saw chaos. He famously described the classical styles as a boat used to cross a river. Once you reach the other side, he argued, you don't carry the boat on your back, you leave it behind and continue your journey. At the very core of Bruce Lee's practical combat philosophy was a concept he named Jeet Kune Do, which, translates to the way of the intercepting fist. This was not just a cool name, it was actually the strategic heart of his entire system. While traditional martial arts focused heavily on blocking an attack first and then launching a counterattack, Lee saw this as a dangerously inefficient two-step process. Why wait for your opponent to complete their offensive motion? Why absorb their force and then respond? He argued that the most direct, efficient, and safest method was to attack while the opponent is preparing to attack, to intercept their intention. This principle of interception required a fundamental shift in mindset. It demanded that a fighter develop an almost precognitive sense of timing and distance. Instead of being reactive, the JKD practitioner strives to be proactive, shutting down the threat before it can fully materialize. Imagine an opponent starting to throw a punch. A traditional response might be to block the punch and then throw a counter. Lee's intercepting response would be to fire a straight kick to the opponent's kneecap or a sharp jab to their face the instant they committed to their attack, disrupting their balance and structure and neutralizing the threat in a single economical motion. It's about beating them to the punch, quite literally. We see this principle applied constantly in modern high-level MMA. Watch a master striker like Israel Adesanya or Anderson Silva. They don't just stand and trade blows. They use feints and footwork to draw out their opponent's attack, only to intercept it with a devastatingly precise counter. When an opponent lunges forward with a wild haymaker, they don't block. They pivot and land a clean check hook or a straight right hand down the pipe. This is the way of the intercepting fist in action. It is the art of turning your opponent's offense into an opening for your own, making their aggression a weapon you can use against them. Perhaps Bruce Lee's most famous philosophical quote is his advice to be water. He said, "Empty your mind, be formless, shapeless, like water." You put water into a cup, and it becomes the cup. You put water into a bottle, it becomes the bottle. You put it in a teapot, it becomes the teapot. Now water can flow, or it can crash. Be water, my friend. This wasn't just a poetic metaphor. It was a lesson in combat strategy and adaptability. For Lee, the ultimate fighter wasn't the strongest or the fastest. It was the one who could adapt to any opponent and any situation. Being like water means abandoning rigidity. A fighter locked into a single stance, rhythm, or strategy is brittle. They can be broken. Water cannot be grasped or broken. It flows around obstacles. It finds a crack and sees through, or it builds pressure until it crashes through. In a fight, that means seamlessly shifting your strategy. A modern MMA fighter fluidly dodging a punch while setting up a counter-strike. If you're a striker facing a powerful grappler, you don't try to knock him out head on. You adapt. Use footwork. Use angles. Use distance management. Frustrate him. Force him to fight your fight. This is the defining trait of the greatest mixed martial artists, Georges St. Pierre, Demetrius Mighty Mouse Johnson. Their greatness wasn't one overpowering skill. It was their astonishing ability to adapt. If they faced a superior striker, they became relentless wrestlers, taking the fight to the mat. If they faced a jiu-jitsu ace, they became disciplined strikers, keeping it standing. They could become the cup, the bottle, the teapot, formless, shapeless, nearly unbeatable for years, to flow or to crash with equal mastery. Bruce Lee was a pragmatist above all else. He was obsessed with a single question: what actually works? This drove him to approach martial arts as science. He meticulously studied anatomy, kinesiology, physics to understand how the body generates power and defends itself. He was famous for his vast library, filled with books on martial arts, boxing science, fencing theory, strength, and conditioning. He applied the scientific method to combat decades before sports science. The conclusion: in a real fight, simplicity is king. Ornate, complex techniques were impractical and inefficient. A spinning kick looks impressive but is slow and leaves you vulnerable. Lee's mantra: absorb what is useful, discard what is useless. He pushed ruthless simplification, stripping every non-essential movement, every flowery mess, until only direct, effective tools remained. Maximum impact with minimum effort. Jeet Kune emphasizes simple, powerful, direct tools. Lead straight punch, borrowed from Western boxing and fencing. Fastest, longest weapon. Low line side kick to the knee, favored, difficult to block, can immobilize an opponent. No complex forms, no elaborate rituals. Training focused on live aliveness. Sparring focus mitts heavy bags to build functional skill against resisting opponents. Practicality over aesthetics, a science of street fighting. Practicality over aesthetics, a science of street fighting. That obsession with efficiency is now the bedrock of modern MMA. Top fighters and coaches chase high percentage techniques. They use data analysis and video review to break down fights, looking for the most efficient ways to strike, grapple, submit. The flowery mess has been stripped away, replaced by the brutal, beautiful science of simplicity Lee championed. The influence of Bruce Lee on modern mixed martial arts is undeniable. He died before the first UFC, but his philosophical DNA is woven into the sport. Dana White calls Bruce Lee the father of MMA. This is not hyperbole. Lee advocated the principles that define MMA: cross-training, realism, adaptation. Jeet Kune was a process, a framework to become a complete fighter. Study boxing, study wrestling, study judo. He blended arts in the 1960s, when that was considered martial heresy. Early UFC events proved him right. Royce Gracie, a jiu-jitsu specialist, dominated strikers, wrestlers, proving no single style is invincible. The future belonged to the well-rounded fighter. Many modern legends credit Lee: John Jones, Anderson Silva, judo, Gene LaBelle. The lineage is clear. Lee planted the seed. The Octagon is where it bloomed. Beyond the cage, his philosophy changed self-defense. He shifted focus from theory to practical, high-stress reality. Simplicity, directness, and intercepting an attack. Foundations of modern self-defense taught to civilians and police. Foundations of modern self-defense taught to civilians and police. He taught the street is not a dojo. Survival depends on efficiency, not ceremony. His pragmatism empowers countless people to protect themselves effectively. The story of Bruce Lee's lost philosophy is more than just a history lesson. It is a powerful call to action that resonates far beyond the gym or the octagon. The core principles that guided his life are universal tools for unlocking human potential in any field. Adaptability, efficiency, the relentless pursuit of personal truth. His final and most important lesson was not about how to fight, but about how to live. It was about breaking free from the dead patterns and organized despair that can hold us back. To embrace Lee's philosophy is to commit to a life of learning and growth. Absorb what is useful, discard what is useless. Are you clinging to a belief or habit that no longer serves you? Be like Lee and have the discipline to strip it away. Are you facing a new and unexpected challenge? Learn to be like water, formless, adaptable, ready to change your approach. Do not be trapped by the way things have always been done. Find a new way, your way. The world is constantly changing. Complexity is rising. The person who succeeds adapts, improvises, and overcomes. This requires an empty mind, open to new information and free from past dogma. It requires confidence to forge your own path and add what is specifically your own. This is the essence of true innovation. Artist, entrepreneur, scientist, athlete. Ultimately, Bruce Lee's greatest gift was a blueprint for self-actualization. He showed us the goal is not to be a copy of someone else. The goal is to become the most authentic and effective version of yourself. Always be yourself, express yourself, have faith in yourself. Adaptability, simplicity, directness, commitment to truth. The shocking truth behind modern MMA is that its philosophical father left us a manual not just for combat, but for conquering our inner challenges. Now it is up to you to apply it. To support the channel, comment, like, share, and subscribe to the channel. To receive notifications about future content, select the post notification bell. If you want to stay with me, choose a video on your screen and we will see you there. Thank you. If you enjoyed this video, please share it with your friends and help spread Bruce Lee's philosophy.